welcome to another Taking the Biz A-level business tutorial. In this video, we're going to examine how businesses decide which overseas markets they might like to begin selling their products in. Edexcel A-level business students might refer to this topic as assessing a country as a market. So when a business is thinking about where on the planet it might like to start selling, which new markets might it like to expand in? Remember, we're not talking about where the business might want to establish locations. We're purely looking at what countries' consumers might a business want to target. They may carry on producing those goods or those services somewhere else in the world, but then they want for them to be available or for sale in another nation. And there's some various factors that managers will have to consider and weigh up and appraise when deciding whether a country is an attractive place to start selling. So one of the most fundamental factors will be the average disposable incomes that consumers have in that nation. Now, we may jump in at this point and assume that all businesses are looking to sell in markets where the average disposable incomes, the amount of funds that consumers have available after they've paid for their necessities like their housing costs, we might assume that businesses are only really attracted to markets where disposable incomes are high. And whilst that may be true for some businesses, one of the more important factors is not whether disposable incomes are already high, but are they increasing? In some nations, they're going through periods of rapid economic development and growth, and lots of the workers and hence the consumers in those countries are experiencing a surge or a rise in their average disposable income. Now, that's attractive to businesses. It means that consumers have greater purchasing power than they might have had previously. It might mean that more people who might have previously been considered working class consumers are now middle class consumers, and their income has swollen, which means that they are looking for new additional goods and services to start purchasing. And it might be that those goods and services aren't currently produced by domestic firms in that nation. So there's an opportunity for imports into that country. There's an opportunity for overseas firms to penetrate the needs in that marketplace by bringing their goods and services in. So managers might be very attractive to nations where average disposable incomes are increasing, and hence there is an increased demand for more goods and services. However, a market that is experiencing a growth in disposable incomes might seem less attractive if what's known as the ease of doing business in that nation is not as high. Some nations are very easy, simple for foreign organisations to go and sell in, whereas other countries make it more difficult. For example, if a country has barriers to trade, things like quotas, tariffs, other protectionist measures that the government has put in place, it's not as easy for an overseas business to go and trade there. There's more regulations for them. There's greater costs that would be incurred in selling their products in that market. And so it's a factor that might make an overseas nation a less desirable proposition to foreign businesses. Whereas in nations that have more lenient trade barriers, maybe the quotas are not present, maybe the tariffs that are charged are lower or not existent at all, it means the ease of going to that country and selling your goods and services is much more favourable. Hence, more foreign businesses might be attracted there. Things like patents can also be important to the ease of doing business as well. There are some markets that on the face of it seem very attractive places to go and sell, but businesses find that they can't protect their business ideas in that nation. So they are prone to copycats from that country, imitating their products and services and potentially selling them at a much lower price. So managers need to think about how attractive is a nation based on the ease of doing business. Is it a relatively easy, low-cost country to go and sell your products in? Infrastructure is another key fundamental ingredient in deciding whether a nation is attractive to sell in. Businesses need to think about what's going to happen to their products once they arrive in that nation. How are they going to be transported to all of the different towns and cities in that country? Does it have good airports? Does it have good ports where goods can be shipped to? What is the motorway and road network like in that country? Is it going to make it very expensive for us to transport our goods around that country once they arrive? Or is the infrastructure more developed, and is it going to be a place where we can transport our goods around more easily? Things like energy and communication systems are also important parts of infrastructure that might make a nation more or less attractive to go and sell in. If the communications, if things like broadband networks are less developed in a nation, it might be more difficult for businesses to communicate with local firms that might be supplying or buying their products from them. If energy costs are higher, it might be more difficult for businesses to transport their goods around that nation. So a developed, a sophisticated infrastructure, if you like, can be another attractive lure to a business that might make them want to sell their products there. Now, exchange rates are going to be an important factor as well. And again, this might not work quite like the theory has taught us. We might think that when it comes to exchange rates, businesses are looking for foreign countries to sell in, that they might have a stronger currency than the business has in its own domestic nation. We know that when the country that you're based in has a weaker currency, then it might make goods that you export abroad more competitive, more price competitive when they're sold in those foreign markets. So we might think that managers are scouring the planet looking for countries with strong exchange rates compared to their own currency that they might be able to go and sell in. But what might be a more important factor is the stability of the exchange rate. When a business commits to selling its goods and services in a market, it's going to make sales revenue in that market that it's going to want to bring back home. It's going to want to convert it back into its own domestic currency, bring it home so that it can be invested into the business or distributed to its shareholders. And so when managers are trying to plan, well, which nations, which markets might be attractive to us, a stable exchange rate helps that planning process. A country might be a less attractive place to go and do business and to go and sell in if its exchange rate is very fluctuating. If the exchange rate might be quite high during certain periods of the year, and then the exchange rate might radically drop again. A fluctuating exchange rate makes it more difficult for managers to plan how much revenue or profit they might achieve in a country and how much they might be able to bring back home to their own domestic nation. Whereas if a nation has a stable, steady exchange rate, it just allows managers to plan their operations in that nation more effectively. So a country with a stable exchange rate might be an attractive place to go and do business. And talking of stability, political stability is another key factor in deciding which countries might be attractive for us to go and sell in. Now, a country might tick all of the other boxes. It might have high or rising rates of disposable income. It might be a relatively easy country to go and do business on the face of it. We might even be attracted to the infrastructure that that nation has. But if it's a politically unstable country, businesses may still be very cautious about wanting to go and sell there. If it's a country that's experiencing civil unrest or conflict, then it might mean that the business has to hastily withdraw its products from that market or can no longer continue selling there. And obviously businesses might have committed costs to marketing in that country, to developing a brand name in that country. And if civil unrest means that they can no longer get their products into that market, those costs have been lost. They are sunk into an operation where the business is no longer able to make profit. So it might make that country a less desirable place when the political system is less stable. Similarly, if the political stability of the country means that it's a nation where corruption is rife, where officials might constantly be looking for bribes or other financial incentives in order to facilitate a business's presence in that country, then it just means that it's a less appealing place for managers to want to go and sell in. Ask can whether the country is a member of any global political movements, whether it's a member of the World Trade Organization or the International Monetary Fund or the United Nations. Countries that subscribe to being members of these international bodies have to agree to certain codes of conduct that mean that there might be greater stability in those nations. Countries that are not members of those bodies, or countries that have been expelled from those bodies, might be a more unstable place to go and sell in, and it might impinge on a business's ability to trade freely in those nations, and so it makes it a less attractive place. So we've got 5 different factors that managers might weigh up when assessing which markets might be appealing to them. Hopefully this video helps you master those 5 reasons. We'll see you soon. Keep on taking the biz.